Okay, so um, welcome. Thanks a lot for joining me today. Welcome, Shubis. Thanks for signing on um, early. Appreciate everybody's support. So today I want to talk about something that I've been working on recently that I try to always touch on things that, discoveries that I make that I think might benefit others who follow the channel. And one of the things that I face when I'm mixing my orchestral pieces is that orchestral instruments, they definitely need reverb in order to sound sort of full and rich, but the reverb can also be sort of inarticulate. It can kind of wash over things and make it sound kind of dull or a little less life, right? So this approach I'm going to talk about today uses side chaining, which is essentially a way of making in this case, a compressor respond to an external signal. So the compressor is not responding to what it's on, it's responding to another signal. And it's a little bit roundabout. This is rather advanced in terms of how the audio is routed. I'm going to go through it step by step so it's very clear. And I'm going to be using a string example because I think strings are certainly something that you always want to add reverb to, but on the other hand, they can be really kind of lose their definition if the reverb is too washed out. I'm going to throw on my headphones here so that I can make sure that we're all hearing the same thing. So there's my string part. And let me switch over to my desktop view here. And I'm going to take that off. I've been working on some other videos. Okay, so I've got these two string buses down here, highs and lows, and they're going out to, I'm just going to focus on one for the time being. So I've got kind of this ostinato vibe, right? And generally, I think it's fairly common that people will just have like maybe a room verb or a long tail sort of lush verb there. What I'm going to do here is take the reverbs that I normally use off. It's rather stark, and I'm going to create a new bus. I'm going to create a new send, and this send is going to have the reverb on it, but it's also going to have a compressor on it. And the compressor is actually going to be ducking the reverb. So if that seems strange, you'll see how that's put together, and you'll hear the benefits of it. So I'm going to go ahead and add an effects track. I'm going to call this fancy reverb. All right. And I'm going to throw, I guess I'll throw neoverb on there. All right. And then I need to make sure that I can actually see effect tracks. So there they are. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have these turning up here. Make sure that these are visible. So I have a fancy reverb. It's kind of hidden. So I'm going to, I guess I need to take these two tracks and I'm going to go up here. This is just kind of some housekeeping here to keep things very easy to follow here. So now I'm just looking at my string bus and I'm looking at my fancy reverb. So the idea here is that I'm going to run the strings into reverb, and immediately after that reverb on the effects bus, I'm going to have a compressor. And that compressor is going to actually basically silence and duck the reverb. Why would I want to do that? Because I want to duck the reverb when the violin hits, so that that first portion of the violin's very articulate. But as the violin sort of decays or releases, the reverb is going to come in after it. And what we're going to wind up with is something that's very articulate at the beginning, but has that nice reverb tail that makes something sound kind of rich and thick, right? So right now, you can hear, I'm going to go ahead and use a preset, one of my user presets here for kind of a long tail. We'll see what that sounds like. I'm going to turn the Okay, so you've got this long, relatively long tail. I'm going to go ahead and throw the low strings on here too, and I'm going to send them to the same fancy reverb. Turn that up full. And okay, so we've got the reverb on there. We've got the send effect happening. The next step is to add a compressor after it. So this is on the effect channel that's running the reverb, and we're going to put a compressor on there. Just a basic compressor. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Right, so we can see I'm going to put this on relatively hard, maybe ratio 6:1, something like that. Pretty fast release. Fairly fast. I'm going to respond to peaks, turn off auto gain. All right. And I need to get a little bit more signal in there. So what I tend to actually prefer when I need more signal is a different compressor. I'm going to go with Neutron 4's compressor because I can jack up the input here a little bit. Here I'm going to run the side chain is coming from the violins. So I've got this stem here. Where are they? Strings high and low. I'm going to go with strings high since that's the main one. You can see the signal coming in there. Right. And I'm going to bring in the input a bit. Jack that up. And I'm going to go ahead with some sort of vintage thing, turn the ratio up to 6. I might even go up to 8-ish there. Pretty fast attack. I'm going to bring down the threshold, so I'm getting quite a lot of reduction. So quite a lot of reduction here. This is also nice. This plugin shows me this nice little trace. And so now I've got the compressor basically working after the verb so that the verb's signal is being silenced. And as the violins kind of fade out, you're going to see that this orange trace, which represents the amount of compression, also sort of fades out, essentially letting the reverb tail come in. So you can see that. I might even make the release faster so that happens faster. There you go. That's a little better. And we can see how much gain reduction we're getting here. We're getting 4 or 5 dB of gain reduction. That's good. Okay, so now when we listen to this, these strings without this, I mean, on the one hand, sorry, let me bring up the desktop. I had meant for you to be able to see that. So let me show you. Rather quiet, but with the reverb engaged. Oh, I engaged on the wrong one, sorry. Let me turn that one off, just get rid of that channel. So what you can see here is with the rather quick release and the very fast attack, the orange trace here is showing how basically you can think of this orange line as the volume of the reverb. So it's being ducked down as far as minus 10 dB, but it recovers very quickly after the violin stops playing. And I could make that more or less dramatic by just adjusting the threshold. So the idea here is essentially to have the reverb responding dynamically to the strings, and it's sort of a little bit unfamiliar or counterintuitive is the word I'm looking for, to have we're sending the strings to an effects end, and we're also on the effects end we have a compressor which is side chained back to the strings. But the thing is that we want essentially the compressor to sort of tamp down on the reverb when the note hits. This works especially well on long sort of sustained sounds, either in brass or strings, where you really want that tail that makes the string part or brass part sound sort of lush. But you also want to keep the that small portion of the audio at the very beginning of the attack really articulate and crisp. This is a great way to do it. You want to set up the reverb on a separate bus, and then you set up a compressor that's side chained back to whatever you're doing. Now, if you do this approach, one of the challenges of this is that you're going to need to kind of create a different bus for different instrument families, right? Now, I generally like to bus everything, so I send all my strings to a string bus, strings high and low, as I do in this case, and then I basically create 2 effects channels for them. So because this approach is always responding to a specific family, like in this case, I'm having the compressor duck based on what's happening in the strings. If I then send the brass to this reverb, I mean, it might be a sound I like, but generally, if I'm just trying to control the tail there on the reverb, I'd want to have a separate bus for strings, separate bus for brass, separate bus for percussion or winds or whatever. But it's a great way to maintain that sort of articulate early portion of the attack on the instrument while maintaining that sort of nice, lush reverb sound. And then you can use the send mix if you want more or less the effect. You can use the threshold on the compressor, also to control sort of how much it's coming in and going out. Yeah, sorry about that, Shubis, that I had Cubase so small. I had meant to have the big desktop view open the whole time. So just to clarify here, I've got my string bus here. I have a send that's going out to this effects bus, and this effects bus is just running a reverb plugin, could be running anything, and really any kind of compressor is adequate. I just used the Neutron one because I like being able to boost up the input if what's coming in is not loud enough. And then I'm using very fast attack, and I'm using pretty fast release because I want the reverb tail to only be ducked during the initial attack of the instruments. I could even really bring my release all the way down. And we see that release happen pretty fast. So I'm still getting a reverb sound. If I turn the reverb off, we turn off that send and see what that sounds like. I don't know why I have them set up in 2 places. It sounds very stark. Oh, I see. One is for the side chain and the other is for the reverb. I tripped myself up. So it's a great way to just control those factors. If you have questions about it, then please post in the comments and I will get back to anybody with questions about this. You can use this in a lot of creative ways elsewhere as well on other families of instruments. Percussion, it can sound really good. Anytime you want to keep that attack really articulate but still have a nice long reverb tail. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks again, everybody, for your support of my channel. If you have ideas for future videos, please post in comments or post in the sort of community area on my channel's homepage. I will be back next week with new live streams. I'm trying to do these every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm trying to schedule them out so that everybody can see what they're about. I'm open to feedback, open to suggestions on how to improve things. I appreciate everybody's input on trying to make these as helpful as possible. And I'll see you next week. All right, bye.